Hello everyone, this is part 21 of What If Naruto Had a Secret, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Naruto returned to the land of the living with a small groan of pain. His entire body felt like it was raw meat. Eyes opening to thin S, he stared up at the ceiling, wondering briefly where the hell he was. He couldn't even remember anything before waking up. His last memory was about hitting that bastard Sasuke. And then it all came rushing back. Unity attacking, that Gaara, fighting and fighting, desperately trying to save the village. Then, suddenly, he sat bolt upright despite his body's protests. Whatever concern he felt was offset by pain that caused him to jerk and fall back onto the bed. Breathing through his teeth, he winced, trying to force his way through the pain. Kami, why did it hurt so much? After what felt like an eternity, the pain receded and he took careful stock of his room. It was sterile white, like a million other hospital rooms, lacking pictures and a TV. In general, it lacked every object that would grant visitors or patients some comfort. If he was alive and in a hospital, then Konoha had to be safe, right? He had to have one. He could not have survived if he had failed. While struggling upright once more, he froze as the door opened, allowing the light from the hallway to spill into the room and reveal a woman dressed in white with the familiar leaf symbol on her hat. The woman froze, eyes wide, clutching the doorknob tightly. Recovering, she entered the room, letting the door swing shut as she approached his bed. How do you feel? Fine, Naruto said, surprised at how weak his voice sounded. Taking a moment to perform a silent check of his body, he frowned, realizing just how much he hurt. Well, that's good. Kiyoshi-sama has you on some powerful pain K. What's wrong with me? Naruto demanded, twisting for a glass of water, only to wince. Multiple fractures, at least 3 shattered bones, mild trauma to the spine and bruising of internal organs. Inflammation, fluid in the lungs, broken ribs, and, the nurse paused, checking his chart, semi-collapsed chakra pathways, and that's after you've been in intensive care for a week. What? Naruto shouted in disbelief. The good news is, the nurse continued, setting the chart aside as she moved around his bed, Kiyoshi-sama said that you would heal faster once your pathways recovered and your bloodline kicked in. But I can't just, Naruto started to protest, until the nurse see him off. Please stay still while I check you over, she said, forming unfamiliar seals that caused her hands to begin to glow softly with chakra. Naruto felt a warmth spread through him as those glowing hands passed over him, the chakra remaining a constant blue. Well, your pathways are back to normal, it seems, the nurse paused, her eyes widening slightly, before she allowed the jutsu to fade. She stared at his arm for a moment, and then glanced at his face in surprise. You're regenerating. Oh, Naruto muttered with a snort. So, can I go? No, the nurse said curtly, despite her surprise. You've suffered severe trauma to your body, you need to give yourself time to recover. Even if you regenerate everything now, you have to give your body a chance to rest. Straining it could hurt you even more severely. Naruto sighed, flopping his head against the pillow. Great, he was trapped here for a while, or at least until the nurse left him alone. Naruto did not like it here. It was too much like being cornered, and his survival instincts told him that was a bad thing. Shaking it off while watching her scribble on his chart, he sighed, wondering about his friends and Anko. Do you know if Ino or Anko or anyone got hurt? Don't worry about that, the nurse said seriously, reaching out to pat his shoulder as she checked a machine. You've done more than enough for us, let others worry about the village and wounded for now. But, no buts. What the hell does that mean? Naruto shouted, blinking rapidly. He was about to force the nurse to tell him what he wanted to know when the door opened, and one large, wildly dressed, old man entered with a yellow frog riding his shoulder. Naruto jerked slightly, as did the nurse, then the future Hokage grinned slightly, realizing who it was. It means, Jiraiya said, crossing to the foot of the bed, while giving the nurse a charming smile, that Kakashi doesn't want you concentrating on anything else other than recovering. But, Anko's fine, Jiraiya said abruptly, ignoring the nurse's glare. Actually, the heaviest casualties were in Anbu and the military police. Excuse me, the nurse said, but Kakashi-sama has issued strict orders not to reveal. I know, Jiraiya said with a shrug. But he deserves to know this stuff, he did save the village, after all. Naruto blinked, and then wondered what that was about. The nurse didn't seem happy, but she did finish quietly before walking out of the room. Reaching up to scratch the back of his head, Naruto turned his attention back to the man and the chubby yellow toad perched on his shoulder. Oi, what's that frog? He's a toad, Jiraiya corrected absently as he sat down in a chair near the bed. His name is Gamatotsu. Hiya, the toad said happily, jumping toward the bed and smacking the side. A second later, he managed to struggle his way up to the boy's lap. Got sweets. Naruto blinked, and then looked at Jiraiya, who looked annoyed. Looking back at the yellow toad, the ninja wondered what in the hell was going on. He's a bit strange, Jiraiya admitted. However, he's good for spying. Sorta, in the right situation. As long as you can give him sweets. Okay, Naruto said, staring at the frog, who just stared right back. So why is he here? Because he's been checking on a few things, Jiraiya said cryptically. Anyway, I think you'd be more interested in having some questions answered. Naruto scowled, knowing the man was keeping something hidden, but he couldn't even begin to guess what it was. Anko. Like I said, she's fine, Jiraiya said with a sigh. She's been coming by every day for the last week or so, checking up on you. However, she's out on a mission right now. Just a quick check-up on a few important details. Naruto breathed easier at that, at least she was safe. He'd never admit it, but she was like a sister. Or, at least, how he always pictured a sister being. Putting thoughts of her aside, he turned back to finding out about others. Ino-chan. Shino. What about Panda Girl? Far as I know they're all relatively okay, Jiraiya said. Ino's been asking about you, seeing as you're not allowed visitors below Jonan. High security ICU and all. Ha, high security. Naruto repeated blankly. What did that mean? Well, you did save the village, Jiraiya smirked. That enlies you to the same security measures as the Hokage, who, of course, is just down the hall. Oh. Naruto repeated before staring at Jiraiya in shock. The old goat. Is he okay? No, Jiraiya said, his good mood fading. He's far from okay, Naruto. He's old and he pushed himself too far saving villages before he collapsed. Oh. Naruto looked down, his eyes stinging slightly. He fought the tears back, shoved his sadness down and then sighed. Which actually explains why I'm here, Jiraiya said after a moment. As bad of shape as he is in, Sachirobe-sensei can still pull through. He couldn't be Hokage anymore, but he could still live, serve as an advisor or whatever. We just have to find Tsunade, who is a legendary medic. Then why aren't you out there? Naruto asked in confusion. If Anko's or another precious person's life depended on some legendary medic, he'd sure as hell not be waiting around. Because, she's a Sannin and none of us have ever wanted to be found, least of all by each other, Jiraiya said, his tone darkening. We've all been in hiding for a long time, and we are all very good at it. But they found you. First, I'm the only one that's even maintained any sort of contact with the village, Jiraiya said with a roll of his eyes. Second, I let them find me. Trust me, if I wanted to disappear, not even the Kami could find me. Naruto snorted, not quite believing it, but accepting that it was a possibility. After all, this same man had trained the Yondaimon himself. So, the man might actually be able to disappear completely. Sighing, the blonde looked out his window, wondering what else to ask. After all, he knew all he wanted to know, what else was there really? So, tell me about your fight against Gaara, Jiraiya said. Looking back at the old man, he frowned. Why the hell did he want to hear about that? Not that Naruto wasn't going to tell him. Seeing the man's unreadable look, Naruto launched into his story, with the yellow frog squeaking in fright and his own yelps as he tried to energetically act out certain parts. So, Jiraiya said after the boy had finished, scratching his cheek. This extra chakra you used for the Gogyo Fuin, did it feel different? No, Naruto said before frowning. Well, I guess maybe. Can you describe it? Jiraiya asked, looking suspicious. I don't know, Naruto shrugged, fighting to keep the wince off his face. Actually, now that he stopped to think about it, most of his bones were starting to itch. Maybe he was healing faster than the nurse had thought. Think in terms of color if you need to. Well, Naruto said, pulling himself away from his realization of healing. I guess it was red. I see, Jiraiya said, nodding, before grinning. Anyway, I suppose I should tell you the reason why I'm here talking to you. Huh, but what about the chak? Later, Jiraiya said, see him off. When Anko gets back. Well, when is she supposed to be back? Naruto demanded, glaring at the older man. Sometime tomorrow, Jiraiya said thoughtfully. Now, you wanna hear why I'm here talking to you instead of completing some very important data gathering? Probably, 'cause there's no girls to peek on, Naruto grumbled, crossing his arms and feeling a sharp pain in his shoulders. Quote. Actually, I'm here because I've asked Anko if I could give you some more training, Jiraiya said, rolling his eyes. Wah, Naruto managed, going slack-jawed. It's a special technique, and, since I'm waiting for info on Tsunde's location, I figure I might as well get you started on it, Jiraiya explained. It took the Yondaime 3 years to create and master, plus you might find it useful. So what is it? It's called the Rasengan, and it's A rank. The rest can wait till after you're discharged, Jiraiya said, standing up to retrieve the yellow frog that had moved to a small table beside Naruto's bed. Naruto blinked, just now noticing it covered with chocolates, cards, and few flowers. Who are all those from? Get well presents from some of your admirers in the village, said Jiraiya happily. Everybody has been rather worried about you. I hear Kakashi's been forced to give daily updates to the council. The pile was getting really high, Gamatotsu said. So I had to eat some of the chocolate to stop it from falling over. What about the flowers? Ah, that Yamanaka girl, I believe. She's been rather persistent in sending them. Oh, Naruto said, looking at the man curiously. Do you think you could convince them to let her visit? I guess Shino, too. I'll see what I can do, Jiraiya said, smirking. Now, you wanna know anything else, besides the chakra bit, before I go? Naruto sighed, shaking his head before pausing. Yeah, the Shunshin. What about it? I used it during the exam, but when I was fighting Gaara it started hurting. Ah, there's a simple reason for that. There is. Yeah, the Shunshin is a double-edged sword, remember. It might be D-ranked, but it's actually a very handy trick. It lets you move faster than most ninja can follow. Right, Naruto said slowly, eyes widening, but it uses up a lot of chakra, right? Exactly. But, how much chakra can it really use? Well, I never did explain that exact details on that part, did I? Jiraiya mused while rubbing his chin. Okay, think about it like this. You have 100 yo and are in a dark room, so you decide to turn on the light. Now, making the decision costs you 10 yo, while actually turning it on cost you an extra 20. So you use 30 yo. Exactly. Now, then, let's say you pay the 30 yo and then decide you don't want to turn it on. Which means you've not only lost 30 yo you can't get back, but are now trapped in the dark, Jiraiya said. So, the Shunshin uses 30% of my chakra. Actually, about 15 or 20, Jiraiya mused, rubbing his chin. I didn't exactly give an accurate example, did I? Important thing is that most ninja that can afford to spend the chakra can only perform Shunshin a couple times on any given day. But I used it more than that. Oh, I know, Jiraiya said, nodding. Those are just average ninja. Some ninja, like you and Kakashi, have large enough chakra capacities and can use it a lot more than others can. The Yondaime had a large enough supply that he could literally go an entire month using it every time he had to take more than 3 steps. But the larger your chakra, the more you use it, and the faster you run through your chakra supply. Oh, Naruto said, staring at his hands silently. Sighing, he looked back up at the man. So basically, it chews up a lot of chakra really fast. Yes, now get some rest, you earned it. Naruto watched the old ninja leave and then scowled, flopping his head back into the pillow behind him. Staring up at the off-white ceiling, he wondered what exactly was going on, because you didn't need to be a genius to know that Jiraiya was hiding something. Sighing, Naruto rolled over and let his eyes rest on the flowers and cards, a small smile tugging at his mouth. It was nice to be appreciated. Ino sighed, looking up at the door, then, grumbling, she propped her chin on her hand and turned her attention back to the scroll currently opened before her on the counter. Beside her, within easy reach, were her notes from the academy. Since she no longer had a sword nor would she be able to afford one anytime soon and her arm was in a cast, Ino had started to study. So, she had gathered her notes from her academy days, mostly empty pages with comments on Sasuke, which she winced upon seeing and scrounged through her family's scrolls to collect the one discussing clan-specific techniques. After that, she had promptly reported for her afternoon shift in the flower shop and began studying. Rank C, close and midrange, Ino muttered, scanning the words listlessly. Supplementary, Shintention no Jutsu, yada, yada, yada. She already knew this one by heart. Still, knowing it and doing it properly were two different things. So, she suffered through the tea of rereading the explanation, then, with a sigh, went on to the next one. Rank B, close and midrange, supplementary, Ino read aloud, sighing. Shinranshin no Jutsu, used to confuse the target into attacking nearby allies. Which I can't use until I freaking master the Shintention and am, thus, a pathetic Yamanaka. Sourly, she skipped further down the scroll, noting, curiously as always, the brief reference to a Mokuton no Jutsu. There were no details, just a name. She had asked her dad once about it, but he had said that it was a lost technique from her mother's side of the family. Still, Ino wondered, toying once more with the idea that they were something extremely powerful. Sighing, she put daydreams aside and turned back to the last entry, chewing on her pen absently. Rank A, long and midrange, supplementary, Ino breathed, already feeling a bit overwhelmed. Shuoshoku Kaite no Jutsu, a complex genjutsu. It is both an audio and visual genjutsu, which causes the target to believe that the user is not moving until the point of contact, when the user appears to cover the distance between them in the blink of an eye, creating the illusion that the user is moving at speeds exceeding Shunshin no Jutsu. Ino studied the details, wrote them down, and then sighed. It would be a while before she could hope to accomplish that technique. If she could, it would be the coup de grace for her kenjutsu style. Finished with her notes, she awkwardly resealed the scroll with her one good hand and turned to refreshing her memory on the chakra and stamina building exercises from the academy. Finishing with her refresher, Ino glanced at the clock, and then decided it was time to make Naruto's flower arrangement, as had become her routine. Halfway through, she was disturbed by the bell ringing, and she looked up with a sigh. Welcome to Yamanaka Flowers. Hey, Sakura said in return, sounding slightly subdued. Ino snorted and turned back to her flower arranging. The girl had stopped by a couple of times during the last week, the first time to apologize for cheering Sasuke and taunting her. The second time, she had actually brought a sword as a peace offering from Sasuke. It had pained Ino to reject it, but she wanted nothing from him. So, Sakura said, strolling through the shop before stopping next to the counter. Have you heard? Heard what? Ino said, not looking up from her task, quickly becoming aware of how awkward flower arranging was with one hand. Well, Sasuke-kun overheard it from his father. Apparently, we're getting a new Hokage. Sakura said, her voice almost hesitant. One of the Sannin. Ino paused, glancing up at her former friend and rival. That was big news, so the question was, why did Sakura want to tell her this? Not just to brag about knowing. Sakura always knew in advance, so it wouldn't be impressive, which meant there was something else to it. Why are you telling me? Because he's been visiting Naruto, Sakura said, meeting her gaze intently. According to what Sasuke-kun's dad has said, the new Hokage trained him for the Chunin finals. Ino blinked, flabbergasted. Naruto had never mentioned that the new Hokage had trained him. Which meant either that he hadn't known, unlikely considering his obsession, or that he had been ordered not to tell anyone. Naruto was not a fan of authority figures from what she could tell, but if the Hokage ordered him, and Ino could easily see Naruto doing as he was told. I also heard something else, Sakura said carefully, glancing around. Something that's upset a lot of the bloodline clans, especially the Uchiha. Before you tell me that, Ino said, just as carefully meeting the girl's gaze, why are you telling me all of this? Because, Sakura said, glancing down. Look, I love Sasuke-kun, okay. I mean I love him, and with my dad being how he is and mom turning a blind eye too, she trailed off before glancing up. I blind myself a lot where Sasuke-kun is concerned, I know I do, but you were the first person to help me, to be nice. My first friend. I ruined that over him, and I am sorry. It was just, with the other girls already. And then you, my best friend, you were always sir and I couldn't. Ino frowned. Sakura's father had always seemed nice to her, but, then again, Ino could remember Sakura's mom having bruises on a regular basis, and Ino had her suspicions. Confirmed it appeared, if she read between the lines of what Sakura had just said. So Ino supposed it wasn't unusual that Sakura would get so obsessed over Sasuke. He was like a prince, someone who would protect her, and nobody would mess with an Uchiha's girlfriend. Not that it hadn't hurt, and badly, to have her best friend turn on her like that, but, Ino could understand, and maybe it was time to just grow up and forgive the other girl. I understand. It hurt, and I won't forgive him for what he said, but, I understand, Sakura. Thank you, Sakura said, looking away quickly to stare at a few flowers. Isn't that arrangement wrong? Ino blinked, then, glanced at the arrangement in question, smirked. Good eye, guess you haven't forgotten everything, It's for Naruto-kun. They still won't let anyone below Jonin in to see him, but they let me send flowers. Aha, Sakura said, a sly smirk on her face as she glanced back at Ino. So, how is Naruto-kun doing? Surely you've heard something. Watch it, forehead, Ino growled back, shooting the girl a warning look. Sakura grinned in turn. Sure, Piggy, sure. Just remember, there are a lot of girls interested in him now that he's helped save the village. Goody for them, Ino snapped foully. Anyway, Sakura said, shifting topics. That news I was going to tell you, the one that's got the bloodline clans in an uproar. Apparently it's over a new bloodline that's been discovered, belonging to one Uzumaki Naruto. Naru. A bloodline. Ino repeated in surprise. So I've heard, Sakura said with a nod. The bloodline clans are upset because the Hokage's office and Kakashi-sama have refused to let them in to speak with the boy. Sasuke-kun explained that each clan wants it mixed into their own, since it would make them that much more powerful. Whoa, Ino said, blinking. What sort of bloodline is it? I don't know, Sakura admitted with a scowl. Sasuke-kun stopped after telling me, but that was due mostly to his brother, Itachi-san, showing up. That's major, Ino breathed, sitting down heavily on the stool behind the counter. She stared off into the distance, not really seeing anything. Being trained by a Hokage, she could accept not being told, but this. Naruto had a bloodline. That wasn't something you kept quiet. That was something you shared with your team, no matter what. I know, Sakura said, leaning against the counter and glancing curiously at her notes. Oh, did you hear that Kiba asked Hinata out? She sort of froze up and then admitted that she was actually already dating Choji. Kiba's been hitting his head for the last week over that. Ino managed vaguely, trying to wrap her mind around what she had learned. Why hadn't Naruto told them? Told her. Maybe, well, Sakura did say it was only recently discovered, and Naruto was an orphan. It was possible that the boy had only recently found out. This could actually be expanded to blanket a whole area, Sakura said after a moment. Picking up the discarded pen, Sakura scribbled a few changes. What are you talking about? Ino asked dazedly, looking at the other girl. This genjutsu, the Shuoshuku. It can be made to blanket a whole area in that effect, Sakura explained without looking up. Too bad it only works for a Yamanaka. Wait a minute, Ino managed, snapping out of her stupor to stare at the other girl. How do you know it can be changed like that? I'm specializing in genjutsu, Sakura said, blinking as she finally looked up. Though Kurenai-sensei started me a bit on medical jutsu, too. Which reminds me, I have to get to the library and check out those medical scrolls. Setting the pen down, she pushed off the counter and headed for the door. Whatif, Ino said, eyes wide as she was reminded that Sakura's forehead wasn't just for show. The pink-haired girl read a lot and had a good memory, too. Seeing Sakura's interest, Ino shifted nervously before asking her question. Sakura, have you ever heard of Mokuton Jutsu? Mokuton. Sakura repeated thoughtfully before nodding. Yeah, it was a unique brand of jutsu belonging to the Shodai Hokage. Apparently nobody else has ever been able to use it. It's even rumored to be bloodline ability. Ino felt her eyes widen, her mind flashing back to her family's scroll. Thanks Sakura. Just where'd you read that? Biographies of the Hokages by Hinata Kishimoto, Sakura said, walking out the door. Ask Naruto for it, he was the last one to check it out. Ino stood there, unable to process everything that she had learned. Secret bloodlines, new possibilities of being related to a Hokage, her former and current friend being a genjutsu expert while learning medical jutsu and being in love with a complete bastard. It was just too much. She could manage to say one word. Kami. Naruto stirred, rolling over toward his dripping IV, bleary eyes staring at a dark wall. Blinking several times, he sighed before sitting up and looking at the door. He'd slept most of the day, waking up every so often when a nurse came in to check up on him before removing some bandage or needle that he didn't need. He'd be fine by tomorrow, or at least he thought so. Getting out of bed, Naruto had a moment of triumph and then, all too soon, his legs went rigid in pain. With a curse and cry of pain, he collapsed back onto the bed, breathing heavily. Okay, so he'd have to take things slowly. Forcing his way through the pain, he sat up once more, then carefully climbed to his feet, mastering himself. Now that he was up and moving, albeit slowly, he was realizing just how sore he really was. He honestly felt like he'd had a house dropped on him. Well, he probably wouldn't be doing any training tonight, damn it, but he could probably do with a quick walk. Just to stretch his muscles. That first step was almost impossible due to his knee sending a shooting pain through him. The second was just as bad, but after those his legs seemed to work through the pain. Opening the door, he shook his head to fan his hair, then slipped out of the room. Pausing, he looked around the hallway, which was dark and deserted save for an anbu outside his room and another room further along the hall. Other than that, there was the nurse's station, empty except for yet another anbu, at the other end of the hallway. Naruto also became aware that all three ninja focused on him the moment he appeared. He had trained with Anko, after all. He had originally planned on slipping out of the hospital for his walk, but somehow he doubted he'd make it very far if he tried that. Actually, Naruto doubted he'd be able even to go towards the nurse's station at the moment, which meant glancing at the other anbu guarded room, he hesitated. He knew who was in there, Ero Sennin had told him. That was the Sandaim's room. Sucking it up, Naruto turned and headed for the door, aware of the ninja watching him intently. Would they grab him? Well, it would only be natural, he supposed. The anbu didn't even seem to move as he approached, didn't flinch as Naruto passed within arm's reach and reached for the handle. The boy hesitated, uncertain of whether he should enter or not. Not because of the ANBU, but because he had this horrible image of the Sandaime, and he wasn't sure he wanted to see it. His last real memory of the old man had been him smiling from behind his desk. Still, Naruto was a curious person by nature, and he couldn't help himself. Opening the door, he gulped, stepping into the room quietly. It was dark, the only source of light the eerie glow of a night light. Naruto, however, had fixed his gaze on the bed, where the Sandaime was lying. He could just make out various tubes and wires. It would look horrible with the lights on, that much was obvious. Shuffling forward, he gulped, wanting to leave. Still, he approached the bed in silence, coming a stop just short of the end, staring at the still figure it contained. It was dark, of course, and the light was eerie, but Naruto still decided the old man wasn't supposed to look so frail. This was the Hokage, strongest ninja in the village. He shouldn't look like this. It wasn't right. It was horribly wrong. Reaching up, he rubbed his eyes, trying to hide his tears. Sighing, he edged closer, staring at the old man sadly, reaching out to touch his hand. It was cold, clammy. It felt like death. Naruto shivered and pulled his hand away out of instinct. Mastering himself, the boy moved closer to the bed yet again and stared at the old man. You shouldn't be laying there. You're the Hokage. But still, he's only human, a new voice said, startling Naruto. Jerking, the blonde spun, ready for anything, but froze, finding himself staring at the silver-haired anbu commander. Masked pervert. Quote. I really wish you'd stop calling me that, Kakashi sighed, hands in his pockets. Come on, Let's go back to your room before Kiyoshi-san comes down here and shouts at us. Alright, Naruto said, shuffling toward the door. Wait, freezing. Naruto blinked, glanced at a startled-looking Kakashi, and then turned back to the bed, surprised to see the Sandaime staring at him. The Hokage weakly motioned for the boy to come back, and, gulping, Naruto did just that. Stopping near the bed, he shuffled his feet, trying not to stare at the tubes in his nose. Naruto, the Sandaime said, staring up at him. You have to understand, nobody can choose how or when they only how they meet death, and, most importantly, if they can keep their precious people safe just a little longer by But, Naruto said, then looked away. Naruto, deciding how to face death is the true strength of a shinobi, Sandaime said, softly, before taking a deep, rattling breath. Now, you should head back to bed. Kakashi, stay for a minute, okay? Hi, the Anbu commander said, patting Naruto's shoulder. Naruto felt his shoulder slump slightly, knowing that the Hokage had told him something important. But the old man was talking as if he was beaten. Then again, seeing him in that state, Naruto had to agree that he did appear beaten. Shaking his head, the blonde shuffled toward the door once more, vaguely thinking of going back to bed. He stopped, however, as he heard the Hokage croak his name yet again. Yeah. For a moment, there was nothing but the rasping breath, and then the Hokage spoke. Naruto, I'm very proud of the man you're becoming, and, the Hokage paused, a shuddering gasp filling the moment. I can't wait to see what kind of Hokage you'll be. Naruto stood there, as if transfixed. He was being acknowledged as a future Hokage, and, not only that, it was the Hokage acknowledging him. Naruto wasn't sure why, but he felt 10 inches taller and just that much closer to his dream. He'd show the old man, Naruto was going to be the greatest Hokage ever. He promised. Entering the darkened office of the Hokage, Kakashi paused, remembering the countless times he had found both the Yondaime and the Sandaime sitting in the darkened space. In a way, they had both explained, the darkness was comforting. The masked man conceded that they had a point, but he still turned on the light as he crossed the room. Pausing at the desk, he stared at the paperwork, then turned his gaze to the chair. Somehow, it felt so wrong to be in this room, to be taking up this responsibility. He had never wanted to be in this position, but the Sandaime had feared that soon it would refuse the job and had decided to act in the interest of the village while he could. Easing himself into the chair, uncomfortably aware of the hat that was resting on the desk, Kakashi sighed, closing his eye. How had it come to this? How could he be the Godaime Hokage, even though it was unofficial until after Tsunade officially rejected the offer? Shaking his head tiredly, he opened his eye once more and carefully set the hat aside. He couldn't bring himself to even try it on, he was just a placeholder. Even when it became official and he was the Godaime, he'd be nothing to remember. Just a mediocre Hokage stuck between those who had come before him and the one who would follow. Still, for the moment, Kakashi was Hokage, and he had a responsibility to the village. Tenzu had assured him that repairs, interrogations, and other items regulated to Anbu were in good hands. Kakashi didn't doubt that, but Tenzu was a bit young for such responsibility. Not that there had been much choice. Kakashi had to have someone he could trust fill in for him as commander. Sighing, he turned his mind to other matters that were now his responsibility to tend to. Take, for example, the fact that the Kusa Daimyo had been a by-rain ninja during the whole Unity fiasco. Then, there was the fact that they were now down several experienced Anbu and military police officers. Oh, and he couldn't forget that little matters of Tsunade's silence concerning Gaara, the leaking of Naruto's bloodline, and their attempts on the Hokage and Naruto. Plus, the final approval for the results of the Chunin exam. How had he ever gotten himself into this mess? Sighing, Kakashi decided he would do the only thing he could at the moment, the Chunin exam results. All the votes were in and tallied. All that remained was for Kakashi to apply the Hokage seal on each sheet to confirm the promotions or the failures. Selecting the folder that was resting almost forlornly on the edge of the desk, Kakashi rubbed at his eye. Opening the folder, he wondered briefly if there would be a sheet for Gaara, but somehow Kakashi doubted it. Flicking through the pages, he pulled the profiles of the Sand Genin to the top, mildly surprised that only one, out of the 2 pages he found, marked for promotion. He briefly scanned the sheet before glancing at the attached picture. Ah, her. Yeah, she was ready for promotion. Applying the Hokage's Hanko on the page for Temari's promotion, he confirmed her as the first new Chunin. Confirming the other Sand Nin's failure, Kakashi moved on to the Konoha ninja and winced, wondering why the Kami wanted to tee him. Team Guy, right off the bat, and, as if that wasn't bad enough for failing any of them would result in a visit from Guy. The very first failure was Rock Lee, Guy's protege. Kakashi felt safe in assuming he'd pissed off some deity somewhere, somehow. Still, the votes were tallied, but Guy was going to hound him to death because of this. Feeling a chill run down his spine, he sighed and confirmed it. Thankfully, the other two had been promoted, which was good since Kakashi wanted to avoid use of the initial Lotus as much as possible. Convinced it couldn't be any worse, Kakashi moved on to the next team and felt like crying. Team Kurenai, a Neria promotion listed. Kami, not a single promotion. Sakura, at least, should have been promoted. She had shown just enough ability for the rank. What were they thinking? Kakashi mumbled in disbelief, but knowing full well that it was most likely due to the new stigma of being associated with Uchiha Sasuke. He hated that the other two would suffer for Sasuke's arrogance, but Kakashi couldn't do anything about it. Still, he did take some comfort in this turn of events concerning Sasuke's failure. Personal feelings aside, and there were several personal feelings, Kakashi was aware of the reason for his failure. Despite showing good judgment by offering Ino the chance to forfeit several times, Sasuke lacked a very important quality for a Chunin. If promoted, he would be expected to lead a team, but his sheer arrogance and ability to alienate so many people made him unable to perform that task. Plus, he had shown his willingness to steal from fellow Konoha ninja, something Kakashi tried to avoid himself. That was not a quality that instilled trust. So, Uchiha or not, he deserved to fail. Still, as he confirmed the results, he wondered why it had to be Yuhi Kurenai's team. Yuhi Kurenai was, perhaps, the most self-righteous, sanctimonious sensei he had ever met. Of course, her heart was in the right place, but she had driven the Hokage insane harping about Anko and her training. Now that he had failed her entire team, he was sure she would be at his tea for the next 6 months. Which left Team Anko, and Kakashi sighed, aware that he could be risking the anger of the single most dangerous sensei of the lot. Well, Kakashi mused silently, as long as Naruto hadn't failed, he doubted Anko would feel a need to gut him. Ino failed, but Kakashi made a mental note to keep an eye on her, maybe point her out to Tenzo later. The skill she had displayed was impressive after all. If her opponent had been anyone else, she would have probably passed. Shino was promoted, no surprise there, and Kakashi made another mental note to point him out to Danzo. That left Uzumaki Naruto, and, in all honesty, it hadn't been a hard decision. First, Naruto had displayed a sound strategy to stick to taijutsu and shunshin so that he kept from revealing too many techniques. Then there was the tactic of using his cage bunshin to distract, combined with a few under Meskai to create an explosive trap unnoticed so that Lee was forced into a position for the Kanashibari. Second, Naruto had battled Sasuke, and while it had been short, had proven he was at least equal to the other boy and probably superior if the match had been allowed to continue uninterrupted. Naruto had even displayed an inventive tactic for using the shunshin against a Uchiha, which was normally considered pointless. Plus, though it wasn't technically part of the exam, Naruto had led a team and displayed an ability to lead well. So Kakashi happily applied the Hokage seal and promoted Uzumaki Naruto to Chunin. Now I don't have to worry about her Kami in my sleep. Kakashi chuckled, relieved. Shino was a morning person. Really, he was an any time of day person. With a colony of insects inside him, the boy had an irregular sleep pattern. So, when Anko had ordered him to train every morning, it hadn't bothered him. Ino, on the other hand, was less than thrilled with that concept. Which, of course, was understandable. Ino was not a morning person at all, as anyone who had spent any time with her knew. Which probably explained why Anko had chosen morning as their training time. Still, Ino was there and dutifully throwing her kunai at the selected target, while Shino was constantly creating his Kikaichu bunshin and sparring. He was discovering that the more often he performed the move, the faster it became and the better his family responded to Kekio-chan's directions. Complimenting her since she expected it from him, much like Ino was beginning to expect it from Naruto, he began a brief sparring match. Ducking a left hook, Shino moved back while willing his family to form a wall to absorb the blow. The clone entered it, but managed to retreat before the wall could entrap it. Which was fine, since Shino had already laid a trap by disguising even more of his family as a stretch of grass. The clone just barely managed to avoid that as well, rebounding off a tree, sending a crashing wall of bugs at him. Shino countered with his own wall, yet again, then weaved his way backward, thinking about his next move. He was so caught up in this that he was caught flat-footed by a small concentration of bugs that into him like a brick. Stumbling from the blow, he was caught off guard once more by a left-right combination to the stomach and face. Tumbling backward, Shino rolled, forcing his way through the pain and regaining his knees with enough time to catch the clone's arm. A second later, Shino concentrated and, forming a spear of bugs, it up and through his clone's sea, which resulted in a burst of bugs as it was destroyed. Panting from the exertion, it was hard to fight when you were essentially divided. He regained his feet. That was really impressive. Turning his gaze to Ino, Shino pushed his glasses up slightly. Thank you. You were doing well with your weapons from what I saw earlier. Yeah, but I keep thinking about Hayate, ya know. Shino paused, then nodded slightly. Yes, he could understand that. While Hayate had been his sensei, Ino had been much closer to the man. To learn of his death had been a blow, but thankfully Iruka-sensei had been tactful about revealing it. The details were unclear, merely that he had in the line of combat. Which they both took to mean that he had in something involving this, unity, during the Chunin exams. Still, Ino had been bothered by it, and Shino was inclined to listen to her thoughts. After all, she was the most instinctual one of the team, and her instincts were usually correct. I mean, what Iruka-sensei said. Ino paused, frowning slightly. Or maybe it was the way he said it, ya know. In combat. That can be awful vague, right? Yes, Shino said, nodding slightly. Plus, we haven't seen him for a while now. Ever since Anko took over as a temporary sensei, actually, Ino said, using her good arm to adjust the sling on her bad one. Maybe they're just trying to hide him from us. That is a possibility. Quote. Or he could just be a new voice supplied, causing both ninja to jerk in surprise. Who the hell are you? Ino asked heatedly, turning while keeping her hurt arm tight against her side. Shino, however, noticed her forehead protector strapped to the leg of her casual black outfit. Her face looked drawn and tired, her purple hair unkempt. So, obviously, she was a Konoha ninja, but who she was and why she was here he couldn't begin to guess. Azuki Yugao, the woman said dully, glancing between them. The Anbu commander asked me to come find you and see which of you wanted to visit Naruto. He's been allowed one visitor. I just won. Ino said in surprise. Apparently they feel he can wait till tomorrow when he gets out, to see whoever doesn't show up, Yugao supplied, her arms hanging limply at her sides. So which one? Shino hesitated. He would like to speak with the boy, if for no other reason than to clear up a few details concerning the Chunin exams. However, Ino seemed almost beside herself, and she had been sending him flowers every day. Kekio-chan agreed. He could wait till tomorrow. Ino, you should go. I am sure he would appreciate you more. Huh, are you sure? Ino asked, startled. Yes, Shino said, his tone growing almost teasing. Say hello to Naruto-kun for me. What do you mean? Ino snapped before Yugao interrupted her. We don't have time for this. Come with me or stay here. Without another word, the older woman turned and started walking away. Ino shot Shino a dirty look, then hurried after the older woman, leaving Shino alone. Nodding, he agreed with Kekio-chan that Ino was fun to tease and returned to his training. When we arrive, don't speak. You'll have a truth seal placed on you, Yugao said quietly, and Ino sighed, realizing she left no room for pleasantries. After that, you'll be asked 2 questions, your name and your relationship with the patient you're seeing. Answer promptly, the Anbu guards will restrain you otherwise. Relationship, Ino repeated blankly, staring at the older woman. We're teammates, nothing more. It doesn't matter to us what your relationship is, Yuago said blandly. We just need to make sure you're who you say you are. After you're admitted, you'll be guided into his room, and there will be an observer. Why are you so paranoid about him? Ino asked, running fingers through her hair before straightening her ponytail. She knew that he had saved the village. Everybody knew that. She also knew the Hokage was under heavy guard, which she could understand of course, but this was Naruto. What reason could there be for this much security? He was just Naruto. There have been 3 attempts on both the Hokage-sama and Uzumaki-san, Yugao said simply. They are, at the moment, a symbol of this village, and those factions that acted a week ago would like to see them neutralized. It doesn't matter, Yugao said dismissively. Right, Ino managed, glancing at the older woman. So, what about my weapons pouch? Surrender when asked, Yugao said without glancing at her. You'll get it back upon leaving the ICU wing. The genin nodded again, and they both fell into silence as they entered the hospital, then slowly made their way to the highly guarded ICU hallway. Ino felt her nerves going on edge as she noticed fewer and fewer nurses. It was almost eerie, really. Turning a corner, Ino paused, staring at the doors labeled ICU. It wasn't so much the doors, but the 3 Anbu who stood silently in front of this door. 2 on either side of the door, and 1 watching the entryway. Well, let's get this over with, Yugao said tiredly as they both reached the Anbu in charge, who, Ino was startled to realize, was unmasked and wearing a forehead protector that resembled the Nadimes from the history books. Azuki-san, I see you brought a guest, eh? The man asked, his face and voice devoid of emotions. Yeah, Yugao said blandly. One of the genin under Anko, Yamanaka Ino. The man nodded politely, not even giving her a first glance, then gestured to Monkey Mask. The Anbu moved away from his station, producing a small sheet of paper that he applied to her forehead along with a burst of chakra. Ino felt a jolt run through her, followed by the unnerving sensation of her normally carefully built walls crumbling. It was as if her entire ability to lie had been ell away. It was a very uncomfortable sensation. Name? Monkey Mask asked, almost bored. Yamanaka Ino. Why do you want to enter this room? Do you have any other weapons besides the ones in your pouch? To visit Naruto-kun, and no. Ino said promptly, wondering why the man had not asked about her relationship with the boy. That was what Yugao had said would happen, after all, but Ino felt secretly relieved, though why she wasn't exactly sure. Relationship to the patient. I know, Ino said with a shrug. He's my teammate, and he's a friend, and helped me through some stuff in the exams. But, I used to make fun of him in the academy, and he can be a bit annoying, but he's okay, really, but. It's like that, eh? Monkey Mask said, see her off as he removed the note. Ino breathed easier at that, feeling her mind return to normal almost instantly. Shaking herself, she glared at the man, who nodded at Yugao before returning to his post. Satisfied? Yugao asked wearily. Yes. The lead Anbu nodded. Your weapons pouch, please. Sighing, Ino handed over her weapons pouch, then, with a motion from the man, approached the doors and entered the ICU hallway. For a moment, she worried about how to find her teammate, until she saw the 2 sets of Anbu guards outside 2 different doors. Well, that made things easier, she could just ask one of them. Even that was rendered pointless, since the first door she approached opened, and a nurse walked out with Naruto's voice drifting after her. I don't care, I want ramen. You'll eat it and be happy. The nurse shouted over her shoulder, before glancing at Ino. Oh, are you here to see him? Why yeah, Ino admitted, blushing at the knowing looking the older woman gave her. Honestly, it wasn't like that, and she couldn't see why everyone was starting to assume it was. First Sakura, then her own mother, Shino, the guards, and now this nurse. I'm his teammate. Of course dear, just go on in, the nurse said brightly, and Ino snorted, stepping into the room. She spotted the old man first, dressed in red and green, with white spiky hair and a strange forehead protector. He glanced at her briefly, then turned back to the bed. Ino followed his gaze and felt part of her nearly freeze. There was Naruto. Blonde hair, blue eyes, a grin, but he was sporting bandages. He looked worse than what he probably was, but, still, it was a shock to see. Then, he spotted her, and his grin widened. Oi, Ino-chan. Naruto-kun, Ino managed, entering the room completely, glancing at the older man. Who was he? He seemed familiar, and he seemed to recognize her somehow. Turning back, she focused on a bemused Naruto. So, how are you feeling? I'm fine, Naruto groused. Only, they won't let me out of here yet, And they can't even serve good food. Ino didn't even bother glancing at the tray, she agreed with him on sheer principle if nothing else. Hospital food was like academy food, not edible by any known human other than Choji. Well, I guess I should let you talk in private, huh? The old man said, smirking, before he walked out of the room, despite Naruto's comments about going off to peek on women. When the door closed, Ino breathed a tad easier. The entire time he had been there, Ino had felt like there was some sort of overbearing weight. His presence had made her feel uneasy about saying anything, which was probably why he left. So, how are you and Shino and everything? Okay, Ino said sweetly, noting his surprise with a grin of her own. My secret is, I might be related to the Shodai Hokage. The Shodai, Naruto repeated blankly, then a sort of shock washed over his face. Yeah, Ino said, nodding. I'm not entirely sure, but in a scroll listing jutsu that only my family can use, it mentions something called Mokuton Jutsu. The Shodai Hokage was famed for his use of Mokuton Jutsu, which was the reason for being given the lore of Hokage. He used Mokuton Haijutsu, Jukai Koten to grow the trees that serve as the foundation of Konohagakure. Naruto said, a small grin on his face. He favored diplomacy over force and believed in a passive form of manifest destiny. How the hell do you know all that? Ino asked in amazement. All this time, and never once had Naruto shown an ability to retain that sort of information. I know. If it's got something to do with the Hokages, I can usually remember it. I've always been like that. Oh, really? Ino challenged smugly. What about the Yondaime? What was his nickname? Kiro Hirameku no Konoha, Naruto said, smirking. There was something to his new smirk that told Ino he knew more than he had said. Ino really tried to keep from caring, but, damn it, there was just something about that smirk that made Ino want to know. I swear, if you don't tell me whatever it is you know, I'll show you just how you'd look bald. Promise not to freak out. Naruto asked, almost laughing. Yeah, sure. Now, what is it? Leaning forward, Naruto's smirk grew even more pronounced. The Yondaime Hokage had a lover, who had a son, named Uzumaki Naruto. Ino blinked, staring at him. At first, she thought he was pulling her leg, making fun of her for claiming a relationship with the Shodai, but then she realized that he was being honest. Naruto was actually. But that was. Ino felt her eyes widen in surprise and shock. You were related to the Yondaime. The Yondaime. The stronger than anybody ever, the freaking strongest demon in the world, Yondaime. Yeah, Naruto said softly this time, his gaze shifting from teasing to a more guarded look. I'm his son. Wow, Ino whispered before grinning slightly. Wait till everyone hears about. No, Naruto said forcefully, startling the girl. I don't want people to know about me being related to him. You're different, cause, know, Shodai and stuff. But I don't want others to know. But, Naruto, this is huge, and everyone will. Treat me like Sasuke, Naruto finished for her sourly. Thanks, but no damn thanks. I just don't get it, Ino sighed, shaking her head before perking up. If it were me, I'd be bragging all over the place. Hey, you're related to the Shodai, Naruto said with a grin, and I think I'm the first person you told, nay. Yeah, but that's, so totally different. Ino said defensively. Honestly, how could he compare the Yondaime to the Shodai? If you say so, Naruto said, shrugging. Oh, plus, you'd be related to the Nadaime too. Ha, the Shodai was Nadaime's older brother. Naruto explained, amused. Didn't you know that Ino blinked, giving him strange look, then snorted. Whatever you say, Naruto Oji. Seeing Naruto's startled glare, she smirked. That'd teach him to make fun of her. So, who was that old man you were talking to? Oh, that was Ero Sennin, Naruto said with a snort. That's his name. Nah, his name is Jiraiya, I just call him Ero Sennin. He taught the Yondaime, but he's a damn pervert. Wait, Ino said, startled, as the name echoed through her mind. You're being trained by a Sannin. Is he the new Hokage? Well, he's a Sannin, and he is training me, Naruto admitted, scratching his head. But, I don't think he's the new Hokage. Maybe it'll be that woman he's supposed to be bringing back to heal the billy goat. Woman. Yeah, Tsunade. Ino supplied in amazement. Yeah, she's some sorta legendary medic. But isn't. Wait, Ino blinked, then began to grin in a rather disturbed fashion. Ooh. If she's that Tsunade. What are you talking about? Naruto. I have a great aunt named Tsunade, and the Shodai had a granddaughter taught by the Sandaime, who became one of the Sannin, right? Yay. Naruto said, eyes widening slightly as he connected the dots. Ino grinned even more, leaning forward to rest her elbow on the edge of his bed while propping her chin in hand. Then, if they're the same person, I have proof I'm related to the Shodai Hokage. Which means, maybe you don't want others to know about you and the Yondaime, but I am so going to rub that bastard Sasuke's face in it. Ino, Naruto said, perfectly serious, despite his own wicked grin. Please don't tell him unless I'm around. I want to see his face as he craps himself. Deal, Ino said with her own equally wicked grin. Anko was tired. She was sweaty and in a slightly foul mood. The mission, a rushed A rank A, had taken more time than she cared to dwell on. When she had left, Naruto was still unconscious, but recovering, and Anko would deny it to anyone who asked her, but she loved Naruto. There was just something about him, something special. So, yes, he was very precious to her, and when something precious of hers got hurt, Anko got pissed off. A pissed off Anko tended to equal high body counts, in a very B fashion, which probably explained the mission. But she was still pissed off at Kakashi, and even more so at Sasuke. Kakashi should have known better than to use Sasuke, but he had been making do. Sasuke, though, that little S should have known better than to ignore an order. If it wasn't for the politics of Konoha, he'd most likely be sitting in a cell for ignoring a direct order. However, both were just lucky for her concern over Naruto. It was all that had kept either Sharingan user from being K in a very B fashion. Just thinking about that day, she could remember the way her heart had seemed to stop when he'd gone slack in her arms. It had felt as if a part of her had been away. Still, things had turned out fine. Well, except that Naruto was still unconscious. Pushing those thoughts away, the fear of losing him, she entered the nearly empty mission hall and presented her report to the on-duty ninja, while leaning against the table. So, any news? Not really, the ninja said, glancing at her nervously before turning back to his work. Uzumaki-san woke up. But that's about it. He woke up. When? Anko asked, startled, cursing the mission. Yesterday. Jiraiya-sama has been visiting him. Honestly, most of the village is feeling better now. I mean, he saved us, and if we lost both him and the Hokage, the ninja paused, his gaze pensive. Well, it just isn't worth thinking about, is it, Anko-sama? No, Anko said, turning away. No, it's not. Exiting the room, she made a beeline for the hospital. He was awake and alone. Well, Jiraiya had been to see him, but that didn't count. Naruto had been alone, and she should have been there for him, and not just for his waking up. She felt the same way about his fight against that Gaara boy. She should have been with him. Should have helped him. Damn it. Shaking her head in self-disgust, she weaved her way through the streets, reaching the hospital in an alarmingly small amount of time. Even more alarming were the various ambush she spotted all over the place, hidden from the general public, but not from her. Anko felt their attention as if fixed on her, was aware of the intent that washed over her. So, they were on guard. That was good, because if anything happened to Naruto or the Hokage, they'd be S before they knew it. Entering the building itself, she was surprised to find the familiar figure of Jiraiya, still dressed in his gaudy outfit and horned forehead protector, leaning against the wall. He looked as if he had been expecting her, which Anko mused he might have been. Picking up her pace, she crossed the admitting room quickly, uncaring about the scowls she was getting from a few nurses. How is he? The Gaki, Jiraiya said with a shrug. Fine as can be expected. Been asking questions and wondering where you were. But he's okay, right? Yeah, he's probably completely recovered by now, Jiraiya said. He's got that unique condition and all. Anyway, we should go up. I promised to explain things to him when you got back. Anko didn't respond to that, instead starting off, leaving the older man to hurry after her. He'd asked about her. Well, that was good to know. That meant Naruto still cared. Plus, her respect for Jiraiya went up another notch. If that was possible, he had refused to reveal the secret to the boy without her being present. That was a point in his favor and earned him a permanent spot on her list of people who were qualified to keep breathing. Passing through the security checkpoints, Anko wondered how Naruto was going to react to the news. If he was anything like Anko believed he was, he'd react with a stoic silence and an undercurrent of anger and hurt. She really wished they didn't have to tell him this. Hell, how did you even go about revealing this sort of thing? Anko had no clue, which explained why Jiraiya would do the explaining and she would be offering support. After all, he had accepted her and she saw no reason this changed anything. He was still Naruto, just with a heavier burden. Nodding at the two Anbu on guard outside the room, the Sannin and Formura entered the room to discover one Uzumaki Naruto diligently making paper throwing stars and throwing them at a wall. Anko couldn't help but grin in amusement. Well, glad to see you've kept busy. Anko, Naruto said brightly, a genuine grin on his face. You're back. Of course I am. I had to come back to beat you senseless for that stunt you pulled, Anko quipped, smacking him upside the head, aware of Jiraiya sealing the room from prying ears. Hey, I kicked that geyser. True, Anko said, nodding as she walked across the room and glancing at Jiraiya, who was finishing up and moving to join her near the bed. So, Jiraiya has a few things to explain. I'll skin ya later. Oi, you can try, Naruto shot back, before focusing his attention on the older man. So, you're going to tell me about that chakra and stuff, right? I said I would, Jiraiya said, crossing his arms. There's actually no other way to say this. Naruto, the Yondaime couldn't K the Kyuubi. Of course he did, Naruto said in confusion. Everyone knows that the Yondaime K the Kyuubi. No, Jiraiya said, shaking his head, he didn't. Or, more correctly, he couldn't. It's impossible to K the Kyuubi. But, everything can be K. No, the Sannin said tiredly. The Kyuubi is an isothermal, adiabatic core of intelligent energy which is capable of so directly manipulating nature that it can split matter into component parts, then split those further into their components, and those into theirs and so on, until it has created pure energy that is non-isothermic and non-adiabatic. Say wa now. Jiraiya blinked, then reached up to rub the bridge of his nose. Anko, you explain it to him. Anko blinked, then scratched her head. Sure. Just as soon as you explain what the hell you're talking about. Oh, for the love of, Jiraiya grumbled, crossing his arms. The Kyuubi was both pure chakra and a generator of chakra. It could literally convert matter into energy, and, since even the smallest amount of matter can produce a lot of energy, it was insanely powerful. Now, of course, since chakra is a form of energy, it had no real need for a physical body and was, thus, held together in a physical form by a malevolent intelligence. So, since chakra is just a type of energy, and energy can't be destroyed, Anko said, getting his meaning, but looking at a still slightly confused Naruto, the Yondaime couldn't K the Kyuubi. But, if he didn't J it, what happened? Naruto demanded in annoyance. Well, energy can't be destroyed, but it can be changed into other forms and even contained, Jiraiya said slowly, glancing from Anko to Naruto. The two options were either to convert the energy into matter or to store the energy in something that could harness it. So, he converted it. No, if he had converted it, he would have had to condense it. Which would release so much residual heat that it would melt the entirety of Hai no Kuni. Also, you would need time to do anything that would disperse its energy, time that it would be attacking you, and most importantly being a conscious energy, it might be able to reassemble itself and come back for revenge. So, he stored it, Naruto supplied curiously. Exactly, Jiraiya said with a nod. Which was a very difficult task, because limiting its ability to do anything required storing its energy in an appropriate vessel. Something that already contained the same kind of energy, or, in this case, chakra. To make it even more complicated, the vessel he had to use would have to be human so it could exert control over the Kyuubi. So, he sealed it inside a human, Naruto said slowly. Anko focused her gaze on the blonde at his tone, and she saw it. He was guessing what this had all been building to. He knew without being told. Naruto wasn't a genius, but he was far from stupid. He could put two and two together. She could even feel something through their link. Naruto knew. Yes, and a baby at that, Jiraiya said, almost ashamed, because only a baby which is constantly changing, adapting, and growing would be able to adapt to the unique frequency of chakra the Kyuubi emanates. Me. Yes. Anko forced herself to remain impassive, she had known for a while now. Ever since the Forest of Death, she had only asked Jiraiya to confirm her thoughts on the matter. Now, however, it was real and Naruto's carefree mask was shattered and it broke her heart. Wasn't it enough that he had lost his father? Or that he had spent so many years ostracized? Did they really have to tell him this? He sealed the Kyuubi no Yoko inside you, creating the very thing that Konoha has said was inhumane. But, creating a Jinchuriki was the only way to save the village. Jiraiya explained firmly with a small frown. Then I unknowingly saw to the final details by hiding your connection to him, making everybody believe the Kyuubi was S. Orochimaru knows, Anko said tiredly, fighting her urge to sit on the edge of Naruto's bed and offer something to help him. Well, he is part of a group that's hunting people like Naruto and Gaara down, so that's not a surprise. Not that he'll share that piece of information anytime soon, too much power in that information. Jiraiya said dismissively. More important is the fact that we keep everyone else from figuring this out. It won't last forever, but the more time we have, the less time our enemies have. Quote. Others know, Naruto said looking up at the older man. The spiders and the forest, even against Gaara, that power, it was evil, the Kyuubi right. People have to know. Not really. Oh, they might know instinctively, but they'll deny it. Jiraiya explained while lowering his chin. See, the Kyuubi reduced this village to almost nothing. People are not willing to accept that it's alive on just hints, he would literally have to break free before they would admit it. Hence why nobody questioned my explanation of Orochimaru being the one to unleash that chakra in the forest. Anko said, glancing at the older shinobi. Exactly, Jiraiya said with nod, right now everyone that knows is in a state of deep denial. What about the seal? Could it break free? Or could I transform like Gaara did? Break free? Not likely. Now transforming, all Jinchuriki can do that, but they're taught how. You haven't been, so to ensure that you don't until I get the chance to train you properly, I've sealed you up again. Anko watched as Naruto nodded, his face a mask once more, but his eyes dark. She felt Jiraiya glance at her, she looked back and then the man sighed. I need to go see a toad. Naruto, I'll see you tomorrow to start our training. I'll leave the silencing seals up for the night. Naruto nodded again, and Anko watched as the man left the room. Letting a few moments pass, Anko studied her student silently. She even managed to block out that tiny voice in her mind, asking how she could use him. Right now, she had more pressing matters. Seeing his continued silence, but aware of his tensing shoulders, she sat on the edge of his bed, raising an eyebrow. Okay, what's wrong with you? Naruto blinked, staring at her in surprise, as if just now noticing her. What's wrong? What isn't wrong? Naruto shouted. I find out my dad, who I only just learned about, his life to save the village. Then I find out that his teacher is the one that made I grew up an orphan. Oh, and before I can even wrap my head around that, I find out that I have the demon that nearly destroyed our village sealed inside me because my dad couldn't kill it. Anko was silent for a minute. She understood him well enough to know he wasn't looking for pity. He was angry, and he wanted to rage at something, someone. Waiting another moment to see if he had anything else to shout, Anko chuckled. Well, I suppose if you put it like that. How the hell else could I put it? Naruto grumbled darkly, crossing his arms. Anko mused for a moment before smirking. How about this? Your dad loved you enough to try and spare you the pain of knowing the rest of your horrible family. His teacher cared enough to try and give you a life of your own, and, if he hadn't, you wouldn't be half the man you are today. And, finally, your dad chose you to contain the demon because he didn't think anybody else would be strong enough to do the job. But why? Why did it have to be me? Quick, I need your baby. What for? To seal the Kyuubi in. Why hell, no. Use your own goddamn kid. Anko raising an eyebrow. Well, when you put it that way. Naruto said with a weak chuckle, before turning serious. He's gonna take me away. Yeah, Anko said after a moment, looking away from the blonde to keep her own emotions in check and then chuckled. That's okay, though. You'll come back. What makes you say that? You're too much like me to stay away, Anko said with a smirk, starting to get up. Oi, Anko. Yeah, runt. Would you stay? Just for a while? Naruto asked, looking at his hands. Anko grinned, happy that he wanted her around, and plopped back on the bed. Sure, but just 'cause you got me in bed, don't think I'm sleepin' with ya. What? Hitori awoke almost instantly, his ears alerting him to the urgency of the approaching footsteps outside his room. Alert, now, and ready either to attack or retreat, he sought his wakizashi. The short sword would prove utterly useless in a fight, but it could buy him enough time to escape or for guards to arrive. The footsteps paused, and the regent tensed. Was it a messenger or an A? If it was a messenger, what would they have to say that would be so urgent? Glancing at shuttered windows in the far wall, he could see a sliver of the sky, dawn, but overcast. It would rain soon, which was good, as Kusa rarely had rain. Shifting his attention back to the door, he listened to the faint argument outside. A messenger, then. Satisfied, he sat up, sparing the woman one of the lightening daimyo's older daughters a brief glance at her M. She had been energetic, and she had previous experience, that had been obvious. But, still, she had been exquisite, and he looked forward to another night with her. At the polite knock at his door, he shifted his attention, listening intently to the faint voice of Hitogoroshi, the captain of his samurai. Regent Sama. Yes, Hitori answered, easing his sword partway out of the scabbard as the door slid open. Seeing that it was, indeed, Hitogoroshi, the regent eased his wakizashi back into its scabbard. What is it? An urgent dispatch from the capital, the captain explained as he quietly entered the room, bringing with him a small oil lamp. Setting the lamp down, Hitogoroshi produced the scroll from his sleeve to offer it formally. Taking the scroll, Hitori checked the seal, then nodded at the samurai, his voice sharp with command. Wait outside, and make sure that I am not disturbed. Of course, the samurai said, then, bowing, left the room once more, closing the door firmly behind him. Removing himself from the bed, the regent anxiously studied the seal of his brother before opening the scroll. The message inside was almost like reading chicken scratch, which was unsurprising, since handwriting was one of many things Noga had never bothered to learn properly. Still, as Hitori deciphered the almost incomprehensible scratches, the regent had to admit that Noga understood the art of cryptography. On the surface, of course, was the news that Rain Ninja had their father during the Chunin exams in Konoha. That alone was enough to infuriate Hitori, but it was the secret message, the gloating message, that truly angered him. Noga was proud of his actions in the premature launch of the plan, claimed that it was an opportunity that they could not waste. It was as he read his brother's eager and proud reasoning for using the alliance with Unity which Hitori had so painstakingly set up along with the fake Rain Nin A which had been slated for use in another plan that Hitori realized who was really behind this atrocity. Noga was a fool. Cunning and vicious at times, but a fool. The boy would not have acted in such a manner on his own. Oh, no. He had been manipulated by someone else, someone who had discovered the plans Noga had probably been maneuvered into revealing them and used them for their own ends. Hitogoroshi-san. The door open, the called for samurai on the doorstep with his sword almost drawn. Seeing the man, Hitori continued angrily. Go get Jomon-san and Hyen-san. I need to see them at once and prepare to return to the capital immediately. Immediately, Hitori-sama. Hitogoroshi said with a bow before hurrying off. Hitori frowned and stared at the scroll once more. Everything was now in jeopardy, Kusa and all of his dreams, all because of this one action. He would have to advance his plans faster than he would have liked. He would have to change his pace and Hitori did not like having his plans disrupted. Noga's mother would pay dearly for this. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.